Okay, boys and girls, we're going to look at the division of a complex number. To keep in mind, division of complex numbers is more like a multiplication of a conjugate. And the conjugate is the opposite of the imaginary part in the denominator. Everyone, yeah? The 8 plus 8i, yeah? So let's take a look at the following. The first step we do is we look at the denominator and we create the conjugate, which in this case is going to be 8 minus 8i. Where do we get that conjugate? It's the opposite of the imaginary part. The opposite of the imaginary part. So we can now multiply it by 8 minus 8i divided by 8 minus 8i. What you're essentially multiplying the division by is 1, because anything divided by itself is itself. So, in this example, we have 3 minus 7i times 8 minus 8i. So let's take a look at what we have. When we do this, we got to remember FOIL. So 3 times 8 and 3 times negative 8. Well, 3 times 8 is going to give us 24, and 3 times negative 8 is going to give us negative 24i. So, we've done the first and the outside. Now, we're going to do the inside and the last. So, negative 7 times 8 is going to give us negative 56i. And negative 7 times negative 8 is positive 56, but we know that I times I is negative 1. So what we're always doing when it's I times I is el opuesto. Como tenemos positivo 56, I times I is negative 1, so 56 multiplicado con negativo 1 gives us negative 56. And that is all over what we have in the denominator, which is going to be, well, let's take a look at what we have. 8 times 8 and 8 times negative 8. 8 times 8 is 64, and 8 times negative 8 is negative 64i. But we still need to do the inside and the last, which is 8i times 8 and 8 times negative 8i. 8i times 8 is positive 64i. Notice what we have. And 8 times negative 8 is negative 64, but we know that it has to be el opuesto, because I times I equals negative 1. So we do the opuesto, which is going to be positive 64 because of the I times I. So let's take a look at what we have. We clearly can see that every time we're doing this multiplication, we are going to have the I terms in the denominator cancel out. So we have 64 plus 64, which is going to give us 128. And then we have to combine the like terms. Negative 24 combined with negative 56 is going to give us negative 80i. And we know that 24 minus 56 is going to give us, negative 32. Negative 32. So, what we're looking at is negative 32 divided by 128 minus 80 over 128i. And of course, we can always simplify these fractions. And when we simplify 32 over 128, we know that it's going to be simplified by negative 1 over 4 And negative 80 simplified with negative 128 will give us 5 over 8. So we have minus 5 over 8i. And there we have our final answer. You should notice that our final answer has a real part and it has an imaginary part, which can be seen right here. Imaginary part. Every answer will always need a real and an imaginary part to it. Okay? So, let's take a look at the next example that we have. And let me just highlight the answer that we've done already. And there we have it. Yeah, there's the answer. And the real part and the imaginary part when simplified. So let's take a look at the next one. Here, in this case, we have the conjugate, which, if you will recall, is always el opuesto. El opuesto. So our conjugate is 10 plus 6i. So what we're going to multiply this by is 10 plus 6i divided by 10 plus 6i. So let's take a look at what we have. The following is very clear. We are multiplying it by the conjugate. So 9 times 10 and 9 times 6. 9 times 10 is going to give us 90. And 9 times 6 is going to give us plus 54i. Now that we have that, we have to multiply the inside and the last. Negative 3i times 10 is negative 30i, and negative 3 times 6 is negative 18, but we know it has to be el opuesto. And there we have it, because of I times I, everyone, yeah? I times I equals negative 1. So it's always going to be el opuesto, because of I times I. And there's the top of the multiplication done. For those of you that want to do things quickly, the bottom only requires 2 multiplications. These 2, because we know that the imaginary parts will cancel out because of the conjugate. 10 times 10 will give us 100, and negative 6 times 6 will give us negative 36, but we know that I times I is negative 1, so that means it's positive. 100 plus 36 is going to give us 136. And we're going to divide that by what we have on the top. 90 plus 18, which should be a total of 108. Plus, well, what else do we have here? We also have the imaginary parts that need to combine. 54 minus 30 is going to give us 24i. So there we have our answer, but we still need to simplify. And we know that when we simplify, we must simplify with 108 over 136 plus 24 over 136i. Remember that if you can ever simplify the fraction, we should always try to simplify. And in this case, we can simplify 108 over 136 into 27 over 34 plus 24 divided by 136, which can be 3 over 17i. And there we have our answer in the simplest of possible forms. Like I said, take a look. You have a real part and an imaginary part. An imaginary part. Okay? You always need to have a real and imaginary part when you simplify. Keep that in mind for the future. All right, let's just turn this into the more digitalized form to see the answer. And here in the left-hand corner, you will now see the answer in simplified form. Remember, you must always have a real part and an imaginary part, okay? Keep that in mind when you are doing division. Even though you get the answer like this when you multiply, you still need to simplify. Simplify, everyone, okay? Simplify your answer always, all right? Hope it was useful. If you need anything, let me know. And remember, practice is what makes perfect, okay? Have a good day.